In this video, we will be talking about the urinary system and one of them being how kidneys work. So how do they work? How they regulate the levels of waste products, ions, water in the bloodstream. That's what we're going to talk about here. As well as the role of the antidiuretic hormone or ADH in fine-tuning the H2O or water levels. So let's talk about the kidney. The kidney has two main jobs. One is to filter blood and the other is to remove waste. And in the removal of waste, uh, this waste is called urea. It's the main waste product of the kidney, and it's made in the liver during the process called deamination. Deamination is where excess amino acids are converted into fats and carbohydrates for storage. So, excretion is the removal of metabolic waste products and toxic substances. Alright, so the kidney regulates the levels of ions and water, and for some reason, urea is not part. Maybe, right? So, that's the big reason why, but I'm just not sure what that reason is. But for ions, these are taken from diet. For instance, sodium and potassium. They're all needed for all sorts at the body. If levels are too high or too low, the cell could be damaged. And let's go with water. If there is increased water when eating and drinking. There is decreased water when we sweat, when we breathe, and when we urinate. So, what is the importance of water regulation? So cells lose or gain water through osmosis. I'm not sure if this is active or passive transport, but again, this is how important osmosis is. Even in the macro level, it's mentioned, it's involved in the body systems. So, too much water, this can cause the human cell to swell and burst. Basically, if the solution is hypotonic, and if there's too little water, then the same thing, the human cell could shrivel. In other words, this describes a hypertonic solution. So, there is a reduction in ions when you sweat, but the main way ions are regulated is through the kidneys. And if ions increase when drinking water, basically ions increase when drinking water and when eating foods with high sodium. Although I think there's a distinction between the ions in water and the ions in salty foods. Because definitely, the more you drink, the better it is. But you're also consuming ions anyways. And at the same time, if you eat salty foods, then you get ions too. But one is not a sustainable habit. The other is it helps prolong your life. Drinking water is the most important part of living. It's arguably more important than food. Anyways, let's go to how kidneys work. So how do they work? We have something called the nephrons. They're basically I'm not sure if they could be safely called as capillaries in the urinary system, but basically they're a small network of tubes where blood passes through. So basically, they intend to filter the blood that is dirty, basically. And the waste product that is produced from the filtration process is the urea. And the tubule absorbs anything small, so water, glucose, amino acids, urea, except large things such as cells and proteins. So everything that we want to keep are reabsorbed. So there is something called selective reabsorption. So all glucose is reabsorbed, some water is, and no urea is reabsorbed. All that is not reabsorbed becomes the urine. That's one thing to remember. So, how are water levels regulated in the body? So, if the water level basically there's a signal sent to the pituitary gland. So, Who sends that signal? The hypothalamus. That is an important organ of the endocrine system. So it basically sends a signal to the pituitary gland so that it will release ADH into the bloodstream. This ADH eventually reaches the kidneys, and they tell the kidney tubules to reabsorb more water into the blood. So if water in the blood increases, this will result in a reduction in the urine produced. So yeah, it says here, a diuretic will cause you to pee more. ADH is an antidiuretic, so you pee less. Alright, so if you're basically dehydrated, you urinate less, your body tends to conserve water more, which is not sustainable in the long run. We all know that if we come to a point of chronic dehydration, our body has a limit. So if we're not able to keep to meet the standard of that limit, then yeah, it could be harmful. We could have a kidney problem as a result. And that kind of problem can be diversified into many kinds of specific health issues. One of them being kidney stones. If you don't drink enough water and you eat too much junk food and other salty foods. Okay, next. If water increases, then water in the bloodstream gets too high, then the hypothalamus will stop sending signals to the pituitary gland to release ADH to the kidneys. And yeah, basically if you're hydrated, tubules will reabsorb less water into the blood and more water will stay in the tubules. Kidneys will have to produce more urine in order to get rid of excess water. So yeah, this is from osmosis again. And about the negative feedback loop, this is the entire process of water regulation. Well, basically, it's an example of a negative feedback loop. What is the meaning of negative feedback loop? Basically, the body is constantly monitoring water levels. So, adjusting is important to make them balanced. So, this is a graph related to how the urinary system works. So, blood water concentration, if it's too high, and it will go back to being too low, and eventually the ultimate goal is of the urinary system is to make the concentration balanced. So yeah, your body works hard to make sure that balance is that balance criterion is met. So excretory products and organs in humans. So excretory products, let's start with carbon dioxide. So it's excreted by the lungs. It's excreted as expired air. So yeah, mineral salts and nitrogenous wastes, basically urine and sweat respectively, they are released by the kidneys and the skin respectively. They are excreted as urine and sweat respectively. For excess water, it's evident it's excreted as urine, sweat, or expired water vapor. So the organs that release it are the kidneys, the skin, and the lungs. How about bile pigments? Bile again is made by the gallbladder, but it's transported to the small intestine in order to neutralize the hydrochloric acid that is acidic. So, bile pigments, the organ that excretes it is the liver, and it's excreted as feces via the intestines, particularly the large intestines. So what are the wastes? We have CO2. Oh yeah, that's basically what I just said. Kidney, ureter, urinary bladder, urethra, renal artery, renal vein. So these arteries and veins are the ones exclusive to the urinary system. So they're connected to the cardiovascular system. But yeah, these are the blood vessels that connect the urinary system to the rest of the body and the cardiovascular system. The heart, basically. We have the vena cava, aorta, hilus, sphincter. So vena cava, this is basically the blood coming from the urinary system goes through the renal vein and to the vena cava. Usually, I think it's the inferior vena cava, since the kidneys are part of the waist, which is the inferior region of the entire body. The superior region is usually the head and the arms, and maybe this part of the body. What's below is this, and this is where the kidneys are, not drawn to scale. So, how does how does oxygenated blood go to the urinary system? So, through the aorta, right from the left ventricle, it goes to the aorta, and then eventually to the rest of the body. And the highway, so that connects blood so that it could go to the urinary system, that's basically the renal artery, which is this one. So yeah, my explanation is kind of terrible, I acknowledge that. But yeah, it's my first time. We have the cortex, medulla, renal pyramid, renal pelvis. I won't discuss that anymore. Structure of a nephron. Bowman's capsule, glomerulus, arterioles, they're important. Loop, as well as the loop of Henle. I just don't remember them anymore. The nephron is surrounded by blood vessels connected to the renal artery and the renal vein. Blood enters the kidney by the renal artery. Arterioles branch into capillaries. Sorry about that. And from there, the blood leaving the glomerulus enters the blood capillaries surrounding the nephron, and they unite to form venules. Venules join to form a branch of renal vein. So yeah, the renal veins, basically this one, are blood vessels that return the blood to the heart from the kidney. I believe this is deoxygenated already, because by then, the oxygen that initially is contained in the blood will have already been transferred to the urinary system's organs. So each kidney is drained by its own renal vein. Okay, blah 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 blah. Yeah, this is basically what I just said a while ago, but in a more disorganized way. Urine formation. Urine formation happens in the kidneys. So for the blood-leaving kidneys, there is a decreased concentration of mineral salts, nitrogenous waste products, and nitrogenous waste products. This is equivalent to the reduction in oxygen and an increase in carbon dioxide. So when the blood enters the kidneys, there's a high concentration of carbon dioxide and a low concentration of oxygen. So I believe this happens first, and what happens next results to this. Okay, basement membrane in glomerular blood capillaries. The basement membrane is recognized to be partially permeable. It only allows water, which are very small molecules to pass through. So, a higher blood pressure in glomerulus will eventually force the H2O and small molecules out of the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule, forming the filtrate. So yeah, the high blood pressure in the glomerulus is responsible for the driving of the filtration process. And big molecules are retained. These big molecules are blood cells, platelets, proteins, and fats. How about the small molecules? For instance, wastes. But other than that, nutrients include molecules can be also nutrients, such as glucose, amino acids, mineral salts, and nitrogenous wastes. Okay, ultrafiltration. This is caused by Ultrafiltration is caused by high blood pressure, or in other words, hydrostatic blood pressure. What causes the high blood pressure in the first place? So basically, the afferent arteriole is wider than the efferent arteriole. What is the what is the afferent arteriole? It's responsible for bringing blood into the glomerulus. For the efferent arteriole, it's responsible for bringing blood away. So let's talk about reabsorption. Reabsorption, as the filtrate as the filtrate passes through the tubule, there is a return of useful substances to the blood by selective absorption. So I mentioned this earlier. It's this one, selective absorption. So for the normal adult, 120 centimeter cube per minute of filtrate is formed in the kidney. So, this is the release of this. This is released as urine. So the body will lose water and other substances, and eventually cause dehydration. Especially if you don't drink water. In order to resupply your body with enough water to carry on. Substances reabsorbed at the nephron via diffusion or active transport. Basically, most water is reabsorbed. So, in the loop of Henle, it's only some water. Distal, some water and mineral salts. And in the collecting duct, just the same as the loop of Henle, some water is reabsorbed. And all excess, everything that's excess, pass out to the renal pelvis. So yeah. What is the renal pelvis in the first place? Okay, so technically it's still part of the kidney, area at the center of the kidney. Okay, that's sufficient information. So, regarding the composition of urine, it's basically 96% water. For the mineral salts, it's 1.8%, urea 2%, and 0.2% goes to the other nitrogenous substances. We'll continue in the next video on starting on osmoregulation. Thanks for watching.